Welcome to my humble little office. My name is R. Keith Andrews. I'm a spiritual guide and paranormal adept. The journey continues today and that's a good question, on November 15th, 2025 at approximately 8 p.m. PST. Now, I've made it my life's calling to remind people that working together, we can make this a better world for virtually everybody. I bill myself as a spirit. Oh, hang on, that didn't work well. I bill myself as a spiritual guide because the tools I offer are the exact same tools I personally use in my own day-to-day life. And the philosophies of life I talk about are the same philosophies I guide virtually every decision I make by. With this in mind, I know these tools will work for you because they continue to work for me and have literally worked for thousands of other people over the years with varying degrees of success, depending on their own personal efforts. Now, before we get into things today, I do want to tip my hat to Storm. He is our primary moderator, and he usually hides in the background, making certain that technology works and that we don't have any problem children in the room. Because remember, this place, I am doing my best to ensure is a safe place for virtually everybody. This said, any bullies that decide to come in, rest assured, if you're thinking Stormzy and rough, understand I'm the one that asked all my moderators to remove problem children before they become a problem. So if you look at the top of the chat room or scrolling across the bottom, you will find a list of things that would get you automatically on the outside. That's my doing. Okay. So I mean, when we're looking at that, that's just the way I operate. Now, today we are looking at reproductive processes of non-human species. Okay, these are ones that I've personally dealt with, and you can do what you will with that I've personally dealt with in conjunction with the Galactic Consortium. Now, before I go too far down that road, understand, my rough understanding is there's about 2,500 different species, and rest assured, bipedal organisms are not exactly a common form. They're just the ones that humans relate to better. Okay, there are a number of different forms, and we'll get into those later, but the massive majority, I'm not going into the details, guys, sorry, not going to happen. Okay, first and foremost, there's a lot of reasons for that. But we have, right off the bat, we have Renee Andrews. You are in with the gold. How's it doing, Renee? Glad you could join us. You know, it's nice to see you back in first place again. I'm guessing the last couple of weeks have been a little rough. For me, the last couple of months have been a little rough. Now, most of the reproductive processes of the various species fall in simple categories. Now, I'm going to presume that you, as our viewers, are aware of the standard reproductive process. So we're not getting into the description of it. Don't bother asking. Okay. Most sentient species that I've dealt with happen to be bipedal, and their method of reproduction is simple. They are a binary organism, male, one female. Now, that applies to many of the different species. Okay, there are commonalities between them. Most reptilians, okay, and understand, reptilian races, we call them reptilian not because they are reptiles, but because they look like reptiles from Earth. Most of them are binary. One male, one female. Okay. Now, those species, they take one male, one female to make a child. Most reptilians still lay eggs. Okay. Now, there are various different ways that goes about happening and how the eggs are cared for after the fact. But most of them are laid in an egg, within an egg. Okay, usually a soft shell that hardens over time. and then they have to break out of it. But that hardening process that provides the child with the starting food. Now, reptilians are that way. Most of the reptilian races have this wonderful little setup where the eggs are all put into a nursery. But you got to remember, the Sarkon, the Circassian, the Tormenon, and the Kamalian all are related. Sarkon is the mother race to all of them. Okay, so the methodology is very similar. When you take a look at the Teklak, which are another reptilian race but unrelated to the aforementioned four, they give birth. They put their eggs into a nursery as well. But instead of keeping the young in the nursery, and if you want to look and learn more about the individuals, it's something we can talk about at a future date. But with the Teklak, the newborns are picked up and moved out of the nursery right off the bat because they will literally eat the other eggs before they hatch. Okay. When you look at the Chitawari, now the Chitawari are not an off-world race. They are an ancient race. Okay. And as an ancient race, they evolved on Earth. Okay. There's a number of reptilians that evolved on Earth. But the Chitawari specifically are a species that literally they mate as a pair for life. Okay. And when when they produce a child, the child is born in an egg. Is born through an egg, certainly. But the two parents take care of dealing with those eggs, as in just like the chickens do, where the eggs get turned over regularly. The Chitawari do the same thing with their eggs. Okay, and they raise them themselves. Now, when you take a look at the wonderfully controversial reticulans do not give birth. They do not produce eggs. The reticulans produce live children. Now, quite often when you're looking at the live children, they produce anywhere from 3 to 6 kids at a time. Okay, but again, they take care of their own. And the reason I say that I bring them into light is so many people have told me, oh, the reticulans are their clones, or their constructs. Cosmic Joe, how you doing? You are in with the silver. The reality of it is, I've had a lot of trouble over the last couple of months trying to keep things moving forward. But August I get married, September I die, October I heal. Now we're back on track. And yes, guys, slight side note, I am back to writing full throttle. Okay, now as long as I can stay focused and not drop dead again, this means the third book in the Elderbachian Chronicles should be completed writing by the end of this year. The second edition of Races of the Worlds. You guys have already seen Races of the World. Some of you have. I'm aiming at having finished before Christmas hits. And then I've just got to do a little bit of final work. So we are getting down to the final end. I started today. That worked out well. Now, many of the species that I've come across, and you can do with this what you will. Okay. Oh, again, guys, if you've got a question while I'm on the air here for the next hour, absolutely put the question in the chat room in all caps. In this way, I can see it. Okay, and yeah, I'm still working on a small screen, but newsflash, got off modern medication, and for pity's sakes, guys, if you're on medication, stay on it. Okay, until the doctor says otherwise. In my case, I ran out, so I'm off it. But 2 weeks later, I can see across the room in the dark again. Okay. Now, many of the species I've come across, you may have seen in science fiction movies in today's world. Okay. Things like if you take a look at the if you take a look, drawing 100% total blank, the Muldock. Okay, watch the movie Predator. Predator is based on the Muldock. Now the Muldock are a heterosexual. Okay, they are a binary race, meaning one male, one female. Okay, they produce live children, really aggressive live children, but live children. Okay, and the difference between them and, if you will, the lions of today, the predatory cats of Earth. Okay, Moloch children are capable of hunting small animals right from the get-go. Okay, they are an aggressive race. Then you take a look at the Udina, which is a hedopod, 7 limbs. Okay, these guys do not, they produce in the water. Okay, they reproduce in the water. Bear in mind, their ships are chock full of water, so you don't want to put a human in them, because the human will drown. Okay, when you take a look at the Elfid race, Elfid, you'll know them as literally elves, or the Kaldar, which you'll know as dwarves, are binary races. Okay, and reproduce much the same way that humans do. Now you'll love this one. Okay, there is a neat little species. If you are an original Star Trek fan, okay, from Gene Roddenberry's Star Trek, there was a nice little race there. They called them tribbles. These are the Econ. Okay. Now the Econ they're literally a furball born pregnant. And the reason for that is simple. They are a primary food source on their planet. Well, I just want to make sure I get the right information here. Where the heck is it? There it is. Nope, that's wrong. Now, the Econ they literally are a primary food source. Okay. Now, these guys, when they're born, okay, where are we? Econ, way down there. When they are born, they are already pregnant and they simply replicate. Okay, but they replicate at such a rate that they produce food for many of the small predators because they've got no defense. They do move, which makes it entertaining. But one of the other races there, and this is the one that I tracked down because it was such a different race. Okay, most species are, like I said, binary. However, the Ecodal, okay, are a trinary. They are a trinary race. They have 3 specific genders. Okay, and the only way they can reproduce is for one of each gender to end up working together, because the female deposits the eggs in the third race, in the third gender. The male then fertilizes the eggs inside the third carrier. And we have Poetically Mistaken. How you doing? You are in with the bronze there, Poetically. Once the Ecodal, once the eggs are fertilized, the third gender, the null gender, carries the eggs until they hatch. Okay, and when they hatch, much like the modern spiders of today, of Earth, the little guys, as they're born, will come out fully developed, fully capable, albeit a lot smaller than the adult Ecodal. But they will feed on smaller insects, tiny animals. Like they, it would take them a while. You take an animal the size of a baby hummingbird, and the baby acatl is not going to have a lot of fun trying to kill it. But you got to understand what the acatl does is it grabs hold using its 6 limbs, grabs hold of its prey, and then it lets its stomach out to envelop the entirety of their prey and dissolve it quite simply, quite effectively. But these guys, the acatl, are born able to fend for themselves. So there is no parental guidance. Now, yes, from human standpoint, that probably looks a little like, well, what the heck's the point in that? When you start looking at the Arborians are an interesting species because they will swap gender mid-stride in order to reproduce. Okay, now, Arborians from your standpoint are simple. They look like trees, ferns, shrubs, flowers, you name it, they probably look like in various different races of them. Just like humans come in Caucasian, green, Caucasian, they do not come in green, sorry. They come in Caucasian, brown, yellow, black, white. Okay. The Arborians come in all kinds of different species. Some Arborians reproduce by literally releasing the egg, or the seed, if you will, into the wind. Okay, relying on other creatures or weather conditions to scatter the seed, and then they're fertilized later by another of their kind. Okay, now these are just some of the methods. As I said, binary races reproduce, most of them in pretty much the same way that humans do. Okay, the Fuente-Wren are an interesting species, and yes, they are included in book 1. I believe they're included in book 1. Let me just double check that. I'm pretty certain they are, but I do want to make certain. Let's see here. I am pretty certain that the Fuente-Wren are that way, are who I'm thinking of. Flip A, and yes, I'm just scrolling down the thing to find them. Nice little part about Races of the Worlds is there's 60 of them that I've got in the books. Nope, the Fuente-Wren are in book 2. But this is a race that literally its entire reproductive system is built in the same place that their digestive tract is. They literally will shake hands to reproduce. But what happens is that the female organ envelops the male organ. Okay, but it's literally built into the forearm. Okay, now let me just double check, because since that's there, we did that again. I do love trying to do this. Not really. Scrolling back up here. There we are, the Fuente-Wren. There we are. These guys literally, their reproduction is done through a handshake. Okay, and again, the number of varieties are absolutely incredible. Yes, you still end up with some kids being stillborn. Mike, how are we doing? You are in with honorable mention. Now, hopefully, and I've got to talk to Storm about this, hopefully I'll be getting back to a day in the office pretty soon. I've just got a few things I got to work out, but my office has been redesigned now. You know, one of the neat things with reproductive systems is they are literally species specific. There are very few species that can crossbreed naturally. You know, and I will tell you this. I got told by somebody, I talked to somebody that claimed to be a natural born Anunnaki Anunnaki hybrid, or half breed rather. Now, what this means is that an Anunnaki and a human got together in a binary coupling in order to produce a child. Let us understand, an Anunnaki, when it reaches the height of reproductive capability, when they reach the age of reproductive capability, they are already, much as they look very human in a lot of ways, they are already 15 feet tall and anatomically proportionate to humans. With this in mind, can you picture an Anunnaki and a human, either coupling? Can you picture the human even surviving? Okay, this is the thing we have to realize. Oh, that cosmic. That's actually a really good question. Now, just to be clear, the mantids, first and foremost, their race. Now, humans call them mantids because that's what they look like. Okay, they are simply, on the whole, scientists. Okay, they species call themselves Kleeklok. Okay, and they are researchers. Now, granted, they have limited understanding of the way humans are. And this is one of the reasons why they do things the way they do. And let me just scroll down here. They are actually in book 1. There we go. Now, these guys are, number 1, they are primarily vegetarian, but they are absolutely. Now, and it's funny you should mention, I'm just looking at them right now. The Kleeklok they're quadrupeds. Okay. And the queen is the only one that produces eggs. But they are here to understand humans. And the reason they are trying to do that, this is why they abduct people. Okay. They're trying to understand humans because humans, frankly, scare most off-worlders. Most of the off-world species are afraid of humans because of humans' aggressive and, shall we say, self-destructive curiosity. Mantids, the Kleeklok, are specifically striving to understand what makes humans tick, because they can't figure out how humans can be so intent on getting off their own planet when they haven't discovered how to even get along on their own planet, never mind keep it alive. So, of course, the Kleeklok are very concerned that because of humans' fear of insects and the Kleeklok's appearance, a similarity to the Terran mantis, okay, the Kleeklok are very worried that humans will find their planet and try to conquer it. And sadly, as has been demonstrated literally hundreds of times in the past, thousands where it comes to small communities, okay, humans have a tendency of wiping themselves out instead of getting along. And this is something that concerns many of the off-world species, and for that matter, many of the ancient races. And let's understand, ancient races are the ones that evolved here on Earth. Oh, that reminds me. This is why I keep my notepad handy. I did discover something the other day. Finally dawned on me. And this is a little bit sidetracked, but people talk about Hollow Earth inner Earth, okay, as though they're the same place. They are not. They're both inside Earth, don't get me wrong, okay, but one of the additions I am adding to Races of the World 2nd edition is to separate the ancient races into the ones living in Hollow Earth, which are the ones living below Earth's surface, and the ones living in inner Earth, which are the ones living near the core. Okay, so we've actually got 3 levels of civilization-based species throughout Earth. But the Kleeklok are specifically worried about humans because humans are the ones that have a tendency of moving into an area much like an infestation and wiping the area out instead of adapting to it. Okay, so no, the the Kleeklok are not here to conquer Earth. They're not here to even conquer man. They are here to understand how mankind is thinking. Just making a quick note for myself to make sure I get this added as I'm finishing off Races of the World 2nd edition. Now the thing you got to remember, okay, when you look at, for instance, the econ, okay, the econ, they reproduce so fast because almost every species that come across them will eat them. So you produce 1,000 kids in a short period of time. You're lucky if 3 of them make it to adulthood. But it's just enough to keep the species going. Now, there are the races. What do we got here? Donna, how we doing? Glad you could join us. There are races like the Zerziks, the Vrozik, okay, the Umion. These guys reproduce by mitosis. They literally reach a point in their life and duplicate themselves. That's where the duplication ends. From there, they evolve on their own path depending on what they experience. So we have, so far, in just a very short period of time, okay, we have mitosis, binary, and trinary birth. Okay, plus, of course, many races reproduce by putting out eggs. Okay, which eventually have to hatch. And there's a lot of variations there. But if you take a look, and as I'm working along now that I finally got my head on straight, my office is set up properly, and as things evolve, I will be putting out books that are literally titled Pick a Species. And for pity's sakes, guys, because I'm going to do them in the order that I think of them, but if you've got one in specific, that if there's a race in specific you would like more detail on, let me know, and I will. And where it comes to the smaller booklets, okay, I will get them done in the order that people request them, instead of the order I'm necessarily looking at. One thing's for absolute certainty: if you're looking at a species that gives birth to live babies, much like humans, you're not going to be able to produce a natural union. You're not going to be able to produce a high half breed between a species that gives a live birth and one that gives a different form. Okay, now yes, it's technically in some cases possible for 2 egg-laying species, okay, for instance, 2 reptilians, to reproduce a half breed of the 2 reptilians, depending. Now, To be specific, the sarcon are a little bit of a problem. Okay, because of their size, they don't reproduce well with the others. It's kind of along the same lines as the Anunnaki and a human. Okay, but the sarcon, who are the progenitors of the Kamalians, Tormenon, and Sirzazian, cannot reproduce with those three. But those three can produce half-breeds of between them. Okay. And honestly, when it comes to reproduction, the thing we have to realize is that it's pretty common sense. An egg layer is not going to produce a half-breed with a race that reproduces via mitosis, i.e., splitting in two. Okay, an egg layer just won't do it. Can't happen. Okay, and if you don't believe me, that's no problem. I'm not asking you to. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you directly. Do your own research. Okay, and yes, by the way, already putting money aside to that effect. Okay, because we are going to be increasing, and we're going to be increasing various different merchandise on that end. But the books are all right now. Any that I talk about are available through the buymeacoffee.com/innervoiceJ link that you'll find at the top of the chat room. Okay. That you go through that, you can get a hold of me there. You can get a hold of any of the books I've written. Okay. And eventually I will get other stuff. But for the moment, just redesigning things. Now, of course, somebody out there is going to be asking, well, where did you get all this information? Same way you got yours. I talked to the people. Okay. And you think about it. I've been dealing with off-worlders, and you can believe this or not. That's your call. Okay. Let's understand something very critical. Everything I say here is literally my opinion. You don't have to believe it. You get to figure that one out. I question it myself. The one thing I have found with so many, what the heck is that? Well, that's entertaining. The one thing I have found out is I question my own information. Only I keep getting other people independent of me corroborating what I'm telling them. Okay. Now, with that in mind, where are we standing right there? Just double checking our time frames here. I am still not very good handling time dilation. But where it comes to reproduction, okay, you got to understand, reproduction happens based on lifespan and the volatility of the environment, i.e., elephants do not produce children very quickly, primarily because they live so long. It's absolutely insane. Okay, depending on the actual race. Okay, many of the actual purebred elephants will live 2,000 Terran years quite readily. 1,500 is considered normal. Okay, this is assuming they die of old age. Okay, when you look, and I've got, again, Terran lifespans are listed in the books. Reproduction is simple. If you live a long life in a peaceful environment, you're not going to reproduce kids in a real quick hurry. Once in a while, you'll end up with an oddity. Okay, where somebody will reproduce sooner. Okay, much like with humans reproduce. Okay, you get one you can get one or just about 2 a year. I mean, you got a 9-month gestation, really 10 by the time you look at it. Now, I just want to take a look now. That's the Frontier Ren. I want to take a look at the Glee Clock because I think let's see, Johan. Oh, I'm in the wrong flaming book. Of course. Do that. It always gets to be done properly. There we are. Yeah, see, the Kleeklok, because of their aggression to each other, okay, there's only one egg layer. But they reproduce, and that's once the queen is pregnant, she stays in one place. Then, much like you've seen with many terran insects, the queen doesn't move after that. But it's not because she doesn't desire to. She literally doesn't move because she physically can't. Now, you'll love this one. Okay, you take a look at the Cheechak. If you've watched, I forget what year it came out, but there was a movie came out called Alien. Okay, starring Sigourney Weaver, and that is an absolute beautiful rendition of the Cheechak. Okay, and again, they're born aggressive as all get out. Oh, there we go. Storm has just let us know Alien came out in 1979. Now you'll notice many of the races that if I can find a movie that shows me a race that makes sense, like you want to take another look at another one, and these guys reproduce by mitosis. Okay, sure, draw blank. I love when I do that. And I am completely drawing a blank on the name, but they are, the Korlok. The Korlok are complete metamorphs, okay, and they literally reach a point where they reproduce by mitosis, okay, and if you've ever seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine, and you've watched the character named Odo, that's a perfect rendition of an Ecodal, or of a Korlok. Now here's the neat thing. They reproduce by mitosis, but you will never, ever see a human on board a Korlok ship. Okay? And the reason for that is because if you watch Space Odyssey 2001, or 2001 Space Odyssey, that ship they show you is a Korlok ship. Now, the Korlok, they reproduce by mitosis wherever they are. Okay, the thing is, their ships are run by bioelectrics, facilitated by them passing in between the circuits of their ship. Now, of course, the neat part there, increase the electrical output, and literally the Korlok will reproduce faster. Okay, so yeah, it becomes a real interesting thing if you ever end up in a war with them. Go ahead and use an electric weapon. You will literally replenish their army because they come into this world absolutely fully functional. When you take a look at many of the avian-like races, they, like the reptilian ones, do tend to lay eggs. Okay, and it's an interesting setup when you watch these guys, because unlike when you take the Uka, okay, yes, they're born with wings, but unlike baby birds, you grab an Uka and you throw it out of the nest, you'll kill it because the wings don't work to start with. They're kind of like a chicken's wings. Okay, very underdeveloped, but will grow to adulthood with full-size wings. Okay. Yeah, let's go back and see if I'm missing something. Probably. Oh, here we are. Poetically Mistaken calls them xenomorphs. Oh, yes, that was the aliens. Thank you very much, Poetically. I've seen a lot of these movies, but my memory for names to start with is a shambles. And yeah, they are xenomorphs. In all fairness, so are the Archon. Okay, but the Archon, they reproduce like they reproduce by microscope. Their offspring are microscopic and are not born. They aren't even conceived until the archon gets to be an adult, which means it's a size. It's a large enough size to actually eat planets, aka Kaboran, or meteors and that sort of thing. But until the archon is large enough to consume and their outer space diet, they don't reproduce. And then they drop off microscopic children. Okay. Now, as you can well imagine with microscopic children, it's going to take a long time for them to grow up. Okay. But what happens is the microscopics are dropped off. They are functional, but they're tiny little things. And they literally grow inside other organisms, whatever they can get to. But they start off in water. Okay. They get dispersed over a planet. Okay, over a planet. And bear in mind, it doesn't matter the planet, because the archon and the archon babies are literally capable of surviving in any environment. Okay. So when you look at that, they get dropped off, they get fertilized by whatever fluid, whatever species-based fluid they come in contact with. Now, this may be because a race comes along and eats grass that they have to be laying on. Okay, this is how their reproduction happens. Then they start growing up, and then again, I am putting this into a lot more detail in the book, Meet the Archons. Okay, and yeah, somebody out there is going to be going, oh, you're just making this stuff up. Yeah, I've lived with that my entire life, even from my own family, until my mom reached close to the end of her life and told me she believed it, which was weird from my end. But what we have to realize is reproduction is not just brought about in a binary fashion. Okay, it is not only male and female. Okay, there are species that will change gender because of necessity. Okay, as a matter of fact, if I remember correctly, and I gotta remember go back over here, and we go find. Did that again, open the wrong name, the wrong file. I want that one. Okay, that didn't work. Anyway, I haven't completed book 2, but in book 2, there are a number of races that literally change species and change gender mid-stride of their life. Okay, and it's almost a flip of the coin, but not quite. Just double checking, making sure I haven't missed something here. The neat part about it, I get people sending me questions on occasion, and this is why I don't plan further than about a week ahead. Okay, because I get people sending me questions, either text or email, going, can we deal with this question? Okay, or this type of thing. I work best, to be frank, when people ask me a question. And Lord knows, if I could be frank and have that kind of technical capacity, I'd be quite pleased. Needless to say, I scramble tech all the time. But where it comes to now, there's the other one. Okay. The xenon. They reproduce by literally building their children. Now, the Xenon are essentially a robotic race. Okay, kind of, if you will, in Terran movie terms, kind of like a cross between Batteries Not Included and Transformers. These guys literally build and evolve as they come across ideas. Okay, and again, this is just another form of reproduction. As I said, binary reproduction, as in one male, one female, is not the only form. Okay, it's just the only form humans are familiar with. Or more to the point, it's the primary form most humans are familiar with. Some of you are botanists, some of you are zoologists. Okay, and with that in mind, many of you have seen different forms of reproduction. Well, when you're dealing with different races, you've got the same setup going on. The one consistency is different racial members can produce half-breed children between the different races. Okay, there are approximately, that I'm aware of, and I haven't itemized them all, I don't think. I believe there's something close to 15 reticulum races. All of them can produce half-breeds between them. Okay, but bearing in mind they are egg layers, they will never produce a natural half-breed with a human. They will, however, because they're the ones that built the hybridization program, they will breed and build hybrids. Okay, but that's a whole different ballgame. You know, and the one thing we have to remember is the method of reproduction is not the big question. It's the whole thing is based on the stability, you know, the protective environment they grow up in. Like Vulcans, Vulcans are an interesting species. Now, Vulcans are not green-blooded hobgoblins, as is stated in Star Trek. Vulcans are a crystalline species, and literally, they grow their own children. Okay, but they are not a binary race. Okay, yes, technically they do. They produce by mitosis. At least, let me just double check that. Again, I've got all of these. Okay, I've got so much information sitting here. I literally write it down to make sure I don't forget it. Whoop. Go way back up here. Let's go up to the Vulcan. There we are. Oh, there we are. Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. With the Vulcans, you'll love this. It is mitosis, but they literally catapult their spore into the atmosphere. Okay. Yeah, they literally fire their spore into outer space. Now, bear in mind, they are a crystalline race. Okay. I'm wondering here. Now, they cast them off. The crystals end up being drawn into an atmosphere on another planet. Okay. And net result, that's where they evolve. But they are born automatically knowing what they're doing. You know, fully aware of it. And of course, I forget offhand which one it was. Thank you very much, there, Storm. Oh, there we are. Yeah. Storm goes, the xenomorph drone. Grown chestbuster. Where is this? Internecivus raptus. AKA, they literally, and the way that they show it in Aliens is actually, in Alien, is actually very accurate. They literally, they take over the body and eventually grow outside of it. Which, by the way, the host doesn't usually survive. If it does, there's an interesting problem. And by the way, with the Archon, neat part there is the Archon, as they evolve, will take over the consciousness, not the consciousness, but the higher senses of whatever host they're in. Okay. But there is also, and I think, I forget offhand which race, so I'm just not going to put my foot in it. There is a species that literally explodes to reproduce. Needless to say, they only give birth once. At least I should hope that's needless to say. Okay, I'm not going to go get coffee because we're just about done here. Okay, but as you can see, there are a lot of different methods of reproduction. Okay, you guys get to figure the ins and outs. But I think for me, the most fascinating one is the Icodal. Okay, because the Icodal, literally, they are a trinary race. Okay, they literally have 3 genders: male, female, and null. The male and female both have to utilize the null gender in order to produce the child, the children. Now, males and females have a lifespan. The null species, the null gender, has a purpose, and once the children are developed, they literally will consume the null and then move out of it to go on with their own life. And that it's when they get out, they start looking for the econ for their primary diet source. Now, on that particular planet, the econ reproduce so fast because of one little detail. They are a food source for animals and plants. Okay, that's why they reproduce at the speed they do. And quite seriously, Gene Roddenberry, when he wrote them into the Star Trek script, I don't know where he got his information from, but I can tell you, he pinned it down beautifully, because the econ, literally, they're born pregnant and hungry, but they are vegetarian. So they will eat whatever plant food they come in contact with. And what they don't come in contact with, they'll go and hunt down. They're just not quick. The Ecodal, on the other hand, are runners. And they will take out larger prey. As will your Archon as they get older. Now, there are a number of species. Some give birth on land. Okay, some give birth in the air. Okay, and the neat part there, and I'm going to have to track them down. I've seen them before. There is a species that literally must be airborne to deliver. Okay, but they will deliver at high altitude, and I'll have to track down which one. There's a number of species I've only started documenting. Okay, I've got the notes. I probably have 2 or 3 inches of loose leaf paper with notes on them, on the different species. And this is one of the things that takes the time to put together. Okay. So let me get this open, because I'm about to run into a problem here. Let's go to open. Should be right. Opening up another document that I require. Okay, we need that. Where are we? There we are. I never did do that. Well, that annoys me. I was supposed to figure out what we were doing tomorrow. And I did not. I don't think I did. Let me just see here. I'm just scanning down to make sure. Oh, there we are. Okay, I'll have to decide on that because I'm not going to spend any more time looking for it. But we are getting down to the last few minutes here. So 2 things. We will be back again tomorrow. You're going to have to watch for what we're dealing with because I just frankly don't have it listed. But I do want to say thank you so very much for sharing your time with us tonight. Really appreciate it. Love the support. Okay. And definitely look forward to seeing you again tomorrow at 8 p.m. Pacific. Okay. Where I'm not sure what we're dealing with, but we're going back to the spirituality side. And then we just carry on moving forward. But until then, do take care of yourselves and each other. And for pity's sakes, stay positive.